one day when she called the little children on the street to come to her. And like the Pied Piper, we came, because she was holding a big tarantula that she said she caught across the street in the foothills. Are you ready for a double Halloween feature? I've got 2 stories for you related to the subject of the day as we make some spider-themed earrings. As I got some materials collected to make these earrings, I thought about some different size buttons, larger, medium, smaller, and I thought I'll go with the medium so that the spiders seem a little bit bigger in contrast. But in general, I like to have kind of big earrings. If you have a smaller frame or your smaller face shape, then you can go for whatever size works for you. And also you can find spiders that are smaller as well, but I used large ones. I picked the earrings that I wanted to use for the main shape that's going to clip to the ear, and then I needed to Dremel a hole in the middle so that I can insert this other button. And this button, I then had to feed a black wire through it and pull it through to use to secure it to the earring backing. I used clip-on backings, but you can use studs, you can use hooks, whatever you prefer. I actually do have my ears pierced, but I like to make clip-ons because then I feel like if I want to use them for a photo shoot or something, I can always use them on anybody, even if they don't have their ears pierced, so they're a little more versatile for me. After I got the backing secure, and I used a glue that is made specifically for hard plastics. I know some people might use a glue gun or something, but I found that with these kind of smooth plastic surfaces, it's best to use a glue that's made to adhere to hard plastics. You can score it by scratching it a bit to make a little bit more texture for the glue to adhere better if you want. And then after I secured the backing, then I used wire and black thread to kind of secure it even more. Sometimes I use black thread when I'm gluing some earring backings to buttons, just because the thread gets kind of caught up inside of the glue, so when it hardens, it just makes it feel a little bit more secure, like it has a backup if the adhesion of just the glue to the plastic somehow were to fail. So then I twisted it and wound it down as if it was like a spider web, and I actually chose black rather than white. I think white would have read more as a spider's web, but for me aesthetically, I feel it just feels a little bit kind of cooler to have it all be black on black. So I twisted it, and then I also used a little bit of that thread to wrap around it afterwards, so it gave it a little bit of a stringy kind of spider web feeling if you look at it up really close. I then inserted one black bead in the middle and then twisted it, and originally I was thinking of piercing the mouth of the spider to kind of go through and have the wire go through, but I realized it's just quicker and easier and kind of worked just as well to wrap it around the body of the spider between the legs. I also chose to not be anatomically correct, where the spider's web should be coming from this end, the rear over here, but it's kind of like the same reason that Peter Parker doesn't shoot webs out of his butt, because it's just not as aesthetic, let's say. So it looks nicer for me to have the spider kind of climbing up, and so that's why I positioned it in that way. Yeah, let's see what you guys think. Well, when looking at the plastic spiders, I was reminded of this time that I worked at a movie theater in Los Angeles back in the late 80s and early 90s, when this movie called Arachnophobia, the fear of spiders, came out. These people who worked at the movie theater had a brilliant idea of going to the party store and buying these bulk bags of plastic spiders, and they literally went and behind the audience during the movie, they just would throw them and they would land in some people's popcorn or in their hair. People did pay to get scared by spiders in the movie, didn't they? But these people took the experience to another level and making it full-on 3D real-life experience, and I'm sure that many of them never forgot. It's genius, or evil genius, and I approve. As long as nobody gets hurt, it's all good. I did say this was a double feature, and actually thinking about these spiders and Halloween and scary things reminded me of the first time I ever touched a tarantula. I lived on this street called Foothill Drive in San Jose, California, when it was still lots of fields and not as developed as it is today, and now it's like Silicon Valley and Google and all those kind of things, but back then it was a lot more nature. And there was this big hill on Foothill Drive, because it was a foothill that we used to go hiking in and go play in and things like that. And there was this woman who lived all by herself down the street. She wasn't exactly alone, because her house was full of cats. I remember there must have been like at least 7, but in my child imagination, maybe it was like she had 13 or something like that. But she had a lot of cats. And she was interested in science. Maybe she was a science teacher or something like that. And she had long, wiry hair that, I guess, to not dye it or not, do things with it or wear makeup and those things, maybe, back then could have been seen as something that was rebellious or not ladylike or not what she's supposed to be doing in society. And now, as an adult, it makes me think about all the women who didn't conform to what society wanted them to do, or who were independent, who dared live on their own, who dared not get married, who dared be independent and happy on their own with their cats. Often, I was even subject to this as a child, were thought of as witches, scary to the patriarchy, threatening possibly to other women. And just think that in the olden days, people could have, killed somebody like her just for being independent and living the life that she wanted to. Well, those things aside, she actually, seemed a little bit scary to us kids. I was probably about 5 or 6 years old. And then she kind of took it a step further one time when she said she caught a tarantula from the foothills, and she let all the kids on the street come and look at it. So she held it out, she let it crawl on her body and hands and things like that. And then she let us take turns of putting it in our palms. And she told us to keep them outstretched so that the little tarantula wouldn't have anything to bite, because it likes little nibbly bits and stuff. And I was like, okay. And from that experience, I got to learn kind of how, if you understand nature, if you understand individual creatures and animals and things like that, then there's not as much to be afraid of if you understand how things work. And of course, there's lots of dangerous spiders out there that can hurt us, and be wary of those, and depending on the area of the world that you live in. But I realized, one of the reasons they use tarantulas in all these movies and things like that is because they are pretty harmless for humans. You can let them crawl all over you and they're not going to do anything. But still, as a kid, it felt kind of cool, and like I was doing something that was like Halloween-like, or like witchcrafty, having a spider, as a pet or something like that. And so imagine now, that was many decades ago, and I don't think that Miss Khan is probably with us anymore. I think I used to say her name was Mrs. Khan, but now I think she must have been a Ms. But imagine if one of those children, learned from her wisdom or something like that, and instead of keeping that tarantula as a pet or to make into a magic potion, what if she had passed it on to somebody else as some kind of familiar or something like that? And I don't know, my imagination as a kid was wild, and even now today makes me think about what ifs and whatever happened to that tarantula. Happy Halloween.